When you think of holiness, making holiness a goal yourself, what sorts of things come up?
Are you asking?
I'm asking. Yeah, I thought we would talk about it a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, my goodness, I think you summed it up great here. Holiness is one of those things that we associate with people out there. We associate it with saints. I think we can connect to goodness within ourselves. We all are aspiring to goodness, but holiness just feels too far away. And part of that is because the people that we hold up as holy just feel like they have gifts that we don't have, but also because there's something in us that doesn't want it, because we feel like the sacrifices that they have made to be holy are sacrifices we don't want to make because it requires giving up so much of our personal desire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also for reasons that are totally what you just said, in our contemporary culture, I think the purity that is absolutely central to holiness, that is really at the center of its meaning, is not something our culture celebrates. We celebrate, let's accept and affirm everything in all of its beautiful messiness, whatever you've got going on, whatever makes you happy and gives you pleasure, however you were born, whatever it is, we're going to celebrate that. And as long as we're celebrating literally everything, the idea of purity feels like something we want to keep at a distance, because purity comes in and says only, right? Only this quality. Purity means free of everything else.
Yeah, and I think we're also, holiness as a concept is suffering from all of the Christian connotations that we put on it. And
Right.
so we have to kind of we have to wipe that away a bit before we can get to what the Course means by the term. And to the point of what you're just saying, I think that you're accurate in that we tend to celebrate the brokenness within
Mm-hmm.
ourselves far
Mm-hmm.
more than we celebrate the holiness. And so there's this through line and undercurrent in spirituality and the culture of large that says, yeah, we're all broken. And isn't that a beautiful thing that we can bond over our shared trauma and and that seems to be the thing that we're celebrating. And what if we could celebrate the holiness instead? When you and I were talking about this earlier, I was saying, yeah, we don't really aspire to holiness. And you were saying, well, we actually need to uncover it because it's just something that's innate to all of us as children of God. So it's not like I'm not holy now, but maybe one day if I do all these things, I will be. We just have to remove the layers to recognize the holiness that's already in us. And we can do that better, I think, if we stop celebrating our brokenness and think that
Yeah.
that's the innate thing in us, but
Yeah.
that recognizing that holiness is.
Okay, so let's talk about the holiness of God's healers. I wish I had more quotes here because we're not going to see a lot of quotes from this part of the Song of Prayer in class, but there's three of them. He stresses holiness as this unifying trait in God's healers. He says, how holy are the healed? They, God's healers, he just referred to them as God's healers, have chosen holiness. And then he asks in paragraph 3, can anything be holier than this? And this is helping Christ to heal, being out there in the world as a conduit of healing. Can anything be holier? So I thought it'd be interesting to take the things that are said about God's healers that smack of holiness, mainly from paragraph 1, but also a bit from paragraph 2, and just make a list of them. And so that's what I did in the commentary. That's what I've done here. It's virtually the same list. But as I read through these, just try to get the sense of the holiness in them. Okay, so God's healers never speak for themselves, but serve merely as mouthpieces of God's voice. They are bringers of peace. Their abilities are not self-made, but rather gifts that they receive from God. As they freely receive these gifts, so they freely share them, keeping nothing for themselves alone. This makes me think about when Helen was first uncovering her gift to hear Jesus's voice. The hurdle she had to get over before the Course could start to come through was she wanted to kind of keep the gift for herself. She didn't want to be getting guidance for Bill. In spite of their high attainment, they recognize everyone as their perfect equal. And that, I love that one, because the holy in this picture are very spiritually advanced. They have things that most of us just don't have. And yet what sets them apart in the end is they realize they're not set apart. Everyone is their equal. They have learned how to truly forgive. All they give is blessing. Their goal is the return to God of the entire world, not just their own return. This is something that you might be familiar with from Buddhism, of the ideal of the Bodhisattva. Whereas in traditional Buddhism, the Arhat was this figure who was praised because he attained enlightenment while the rest of us didn't. But then the Bodhisattva ideal came along, and the ideal there was, I'm going to wait until everyone is enlightened. I remember we had a Zen teacher in college come to our class, and he said that Zen masters would say to each other, until the grass, and that was short for, we're staying behind until the grass gets enlightened. Beautiful ideal. So in these qualities, I hope you can see that there's an egolessness and a holiness. There's a freedom from ego. They never speak for themselves. And then there's that tapping into God's own purity, their mouthpieces for God's voice. And that sense, I feel, that holiness sense runs through all of these qualities. And that really ties together the description of God's healers in this section.
Robert, one of the things that's coming up in the chat repeatedly is the idea of a disconnect from holiness because it feels too grand of a quality to give to ourselves. Who am I to call myself holy? And what's interesting about these points is that they make it, at least the Course's concept of holiness, achievable. This is your part in the process of holiness. So when we say that you just have to remove the layers because the holiness is innate to you, well, here are the steps that you can take to remove those layers. Yeah. Who among us just gives blessing to the challenges and to the obstacles of this world? But we can.
We could take away the rest of the things that we normally give and give only that. Mm-hmm. Is it that unattainable to see everyone as your perfect equal? I know the ego hates that idea. All of our egos do. But you can picture getting there.
Can you have conversations where you're not trying to advance your agenda, but really listening and trying to be the presence of God in the room?
And that is your agenda.